Welcome back, my beautiful friends. Come along with me and help decorate this cake. So, I usually don't video myself making the cake itself. I'm not going to give the recipe yet, but this is me mixing all the ingredients to make the cake. It is a buttercream cake. So, I'm just mixing, mix all the ingredients up. I have a real weird tendency to wipe as I go. So I'm always wiping down. It's part of the washing the hands, the sanitizing. So I'm always wiping everything down. So I mix. I go ahead and clean the sides and then turn the mixer right back on just to make sure everything is incorporated. And last thing I would want is to get an eggshell or have cooked egg inside of a cake just in the middle or something like that. So I do use that bag holder back there in my 1 gallon Texas Tough bags. I pour in the mixture into that gallon bag. Usually I would pour it directly into the cake pans, but I had to wait. The oven was preheating or there was some kind of deal, so I had to wait, and I just feel better with it going into a plastic bag. So as you notice, it looks a little difficult to pour in, and it's because it is. I cut the hole a little too small. So I filled those cake pans. I had made the buttercream, and so usually to adhere, well, I guess it went a little bit fast. I cooked all the cakes, and so now I didn't show that portion of it. Here are the cooked versions. So I went ahead and adhered the cake with some buttercream to the pan that I had made. This is the filling, a strawberry filling. So I cool each 8-inch round in the refrigerator on a parchment paper. You see that filling coming out. It's okay, leave it there. It's fine. And then I go ahead and add the last one, pressing down. So it kind of looks like that. Make sure everything is kind of level. I do add red icing to the top, which will be the color of the cake. And I adhere a circular dish to it. And I put press and seal on there to keep that red dye from going on there. But for the real reason I put it on there is so that the buttercream doesn't make it oily. So I adhere the circular dish with the buttercream in there. I put it in the refrigerator for about 4 hours and let that like kind of seal. And then I come back and I ice the cake. So I add so again, I just start icing the sides. I usually will go around the rim of the circular cylinder that I add on top and add the icing there first just to make sure I cover all the crevices. You do get some crevices on the top, so I just make sure that that is as much as possible that I cover any kind of little cracks or anything like that on the top. And so I just go ahead and smooth, make sure I don't have any excess, and add it to the open portion and then go back in. I do run out right here of red buttercream. I thought I had made enough, but I didn't. I just need a little bit more. So I had some white buttercream on the side, went ahead and mixed it real quick. And right here, I'm just trying to see, do I really need to mix it or not? But I did, obviously. There you see, I had that hole. So I just mixed a little bit more and added it in. And there I go. And just adding it in. I always have white icing on standby. I just don't like to remix because sometimes you can end up with two different colors. And so you just smooth it with that smoother. I do dip my smoother in hot water. It helps to keep any bubbles or cracks on the cake, on the icing itself. So I just go ahead and smooth it around, and then I will let the cake sit like that for about 10 minutes outside of the refrigerator, only because if there's any air bubbles that form where you stick your filling at, you'll see it right now. So you got to give it some time to settle, and then that way you can go out around and you can actually pop the air bubbles that are forming and then go back around with the smoother and smooth it, and it's not in the refrigerator and then doing this later on the table. It will do that on the table at room temperature because these are cakes. They do shift, they are edible, and if they're not cold, they're not going to stay firm. So on the top, if you did notice, there were a little bit of gaps up there. No matter how much you smooth it out, there are always going to be gaps. So I go back with an offset spatula and just kind of fill those gaps in real quick You can also use a clean finger, which will help not get your icing all the way to the edge. Um, it's your preference. I use the offset spatula. I use both. It just depends. My fingers and my hands are always clean. I keep my nails short. I'm always washing my hands throughout this. So now I'm rolling out some fondant to make some straps and some borders for the side. This is actually going to be the front of the cake where the what do I call it? Overalls are at. I'm sorry, I forgot what that word is. So I'm just adding a little texture so it can make it a little bit, realer, some character to it. More realistic looking is the better way to say that. So I just roll out this fondant piece to do the suspenders of the overalls and also the portion on the bottom of the cake so that it can go around the cake and cover the bottom border. And then I add that little texture tool. I go ahead and add that to it also so it can give it a little more texture and a more realistic look, I guess you want to say. So here I am rolling more fondant out because I need the suspenders now. And I like to cut the end parts off with the pizza dough cutter. It helps. I don't know. I've always used it. I use it when I'm covering a cake with fondant also. And I just use that little roller. That discoloration there, that purple, was because I dropped purple dye on it, food coloring. There we go. So go ahead and add just on one side that texture to it. And then I add it to the cake. The cake, I will not add any fondant pieces until it's been in the refrigerator for about 2 to 3 hours. So I'm just making all the fondant pieces while the cake is in there hot, hardening up. So at this point, I'm making two little button pieces for the suspenders. I'm going to make the middle piece that Mario usually has his name on, but we're going to change it to an A. And I'm just cutting them out with cookie cutters and adhering them on. Right here, you would not need any water because everything is so fresh. All the fondant pieces are made from homemade marshmallow fondant. And so, again, if you've been with me, you've seen my other videos, I look for imperfections in the cake, and that's where I adhere all the fondant pieces. So I go ahead and add on the fondant pieces to the cake, decorating as I go, pushing the pieces into place and making sure it's all looking nice and even, and bring it out and just kind of add the pieces on there so that they look good. And there I go. I'll cut the back with a X-Acto knife that's made from baking and just make sure it's all nice and cut and lines up evenly. And I go back and I push the fondant into place to make sure there's no gaps. I add on some toys on the top um, that were requested. And there you go. That's the finished piece. Like, subscribe, and follow.